This week, Switch 2 sales stumble over Christmas, the Nex Playground plots its European launch, and the company behind the smash hit Phasmaphobia has launched a publisher. Hello and welcome to the Game Business Show. To help me navigate these topics and these stories, and maybe a few more, we have a video game media veteran legend with us even. She's the video games editor of The Guardian. It's Keza MacDonald. Hello, Keza. Welcome to the show.
Hello, Chris. Thank you for having me.
So you've got a book coming out.
I have.
I want to get the suffix right. Is it Super Nintendo, How One Japanese Company Helped the World Have Fun? Have I got that right?
That is what it's called in the UK. Yes, the Americans have gone for a slightly different subtitle, which is the game-changing company that unlocked the power of play. So
the power of play.
I can even show you them. This is the UK one.
Oh.
It's very cute. And then the US one is this.
Oh, that. All right. Which one do you prefer?
I can't possibly say.
Oh,
Which of my children do I prefer? I can't answer that question.
Well, we can. Nintendo Life do their sort of like they take like the PAL, the NTSC, you know, all the different box arts from different markets, and the people have to vote on it. So maybe they should do that for your
perfect. Yeah.
For your books. You don't even have to. February 12th, is that right?
That's right. It's February. I think it's February 5th in the US, February 12th in the UK. It's a cultural history of Nintendo. So it's very lively. And it's based on my 20 years worth now of covering Nintendo as a journalist and 30 years worth of playing Nintendo games. So it's kind of my life's work so far, this book.
Oh, wow.
I'm very proud of it.
How long did it take you to do? When did you finish it?
Well, publishing is extremely slow. So I finished writing it about a year and a bit ago.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and then it always takes a long time, but you know, there's covers and there's proofing and there's doing the audiobook and all that kind of stuff. So it's been about a year since I finished it and was like, I never want to look at this again. I don't even know if it's good. But then after a year and 2 months of not looking at it, it's actually coming out and I'm feeling very excited about it.
You're doing a book tour?
That's right. In the UK, I will be in Edinburgh, St Andrews, Glasgow is where I'm launching it first because that's where I live. And then I will also be in London, Brighton and Manchester throughout February.
Oh, wow.
If anyone wants to find out more about that, you can just Google it and all of the things will come up.
I have no experience of this at all, other than what other people tell me. And I once, years and years ago when I was at MCV, I had to put together a Zelda magazine, which was like Nintendo paid for it. It was going to go inside MCV. And it was like, it's supposed to be 25 years of Nintendo, Zelda or whatever. I think it was 25 years of Zelda.
I think I'm in that.
Yeah, I think you are.
Yeah.
And at the time when I was initially, when I was in the meeting and Nintendo's marketing team were there and PR team, and I said, right, so great, I can maybe talk to the developers about how they made the games and stuff like that. And they went, no.
Yeah.
You could. And in the end, it was a lovely, I thought it was lovely. I was quite proud of it. It was one of the first magazine I ever edited. But I discovered how hard it is to get Nintendo to take part, shall I say, in these sort of things. And is that why you've gone down the sort of I don't know what the question is. I don't have a question.
Did Nintendo open themselves up like a beautiful
flower,
one of those weird those onions, those deep fried onions that you get in restaurants, a blooming onion? No, they did not open themselves up like a blooming onion. That did not happen. Well, obviously I've been interviewing Nintendo's creatives for various reasons in my various games media jobs over the years. So I had a lot to draw from on that front. And there is some new material. I spoke with Shigeru Miyamoto in 2023.
Yeah, I remember.
Yeah, which was, that was a big deal because I visited Nintendo's HQ, which is obviously something that very few people get to do. So I was enormously honored to be able to do that. So there's a lot of new material from not just that interview, but people like Eiji Aonuma, Hisashi Nogami, other like long-term creatives at Nintendo, and then some of the new guard, as it were. But then also an incredible resource for anybody who's interested in Nintendo, the history of Nintendo, is Satoru Iwata Asks interviews, which obviously he interviewed basically every Nintendo developer about every Nintendo game released during the Wii and DS era. And it's an absolute trove of like wonderful information about how Nintendo works. And I did a lot of diving into that material as well. And that combined with my own experience, combined with years as a player, it kind of has come together into, I think, quite a energetic exploration of like where these games come from and why they're so uniquely delightful. Like why Nintendo games are different from most other video games and how they've managed to maintain that sense of wonder throughout, 40-ish years of making games. And also I learned a lot that I didn't already know about Nintendo's time before it was a game maker, when it was making, originally, of course, playing cards in the 1800s, and then right through all the other weird and wonderful stuff that it made during the 1970s. So that was very interesting for me as a long-term Nintendo student. I'd never really known much about that, and I did learn a lot about it from people who've collected all the old cards. And there's one guy he's built a replica of Nintendo's very first headquarters in his back garden in
Right.
in France. And inside that replica of Nintendo's first headquarters is just this incredible collection of Nintendo playing cards and adverts from old magazines. He's even got his hands on one of the old sales books that Nintendo's sales reps would have gone around with, selling all the playing cards that they used to make in the 1940s, 50s, and 60s. So yeah, people like that have been. I learned a lot I didn't already know from those students of Nintendo's early history.
Oh wow! Well, those books. Well, I've got it on order.
Thank you. Yes.
I'm excited. Next time I see you, which is not as often as I'd like, next time I see you, I'll get your signature, get your scribble on it.
Excellent. Yeah, you get my chicken scratch autograph.
Yeah, that's the thing. Yeah. Welcome to the show, and good luck with the book. But we've got some stories to talk about, and actually, the first story, this is a classic Dring story. It's a numbers story, but I thought you'd be perfect for it, Keza, because it's around the Switch 2 over Christmas. So, Nintendo Switch 2 launched in most markets, and it flew out the gate in most markets. So it was the biggest console launch of all time, massive success. But one of the things that us in the analyst world and other analysts and stuff were saying, the real test for Nintendo was going to be Christmas, because you knew it was going to do quite well at the launch, because there's a huge audience of people that's just ready to upgrade to the next thing. And they had lots of stock in the market. But it's had a slightly, I've got to be careful how I phrase this, because it had a tough Christmas. So, well, comparatively tough. So US data tracker Sakana reported that US console sales in November, it had the worst result in 30 years. We've talked about that already, but the game business understands that for November, we haven't got the December data yet, but for November, Switch 2 sales were down by over a third compared to what the Switch 1 did in November during the same period in 2017 when the Switch 1 launched. In the UK, it's a similar story. Switch 2 sales for the last 8 weeks of 2025 are 16% lower than what the Switch 1 managed during the last 8 weeks of 2017. It's a little better in the UK than the US, because if you combine Switch 2 and Switch 1 sales together for those 8 weeks, actually it's up 7%. And overall for the year, Switch 2 UK sales 2025 are nearly 6% up compared with Switch 1 in 2017. In fact, the UK is the number one market in Europe for Switch 2, which is unusual because normally it's France, and France actually is the biggest disappointing result. For the full year, France data, Switch 2 sales are 30% lower than the launch year of Switch 1. Now, Switch 1 was on sale for 14 longer weeks, obviously, but that's still a really disappointing result and unusual for what you'd expect from France, which loves Nintendo. Generally across the board, Nintendo Switch 2 did have a better year than Switch 1, but over Christmas, it was particularly weak. I actually had a bit of a chat with somebody that I know at Nintendo who's quite senior. They were quite sanguine about it, but they said it was a combination of a tough economy, a higher price point, and the absence of a big killer Christmas game. And of course, Keza, you'll know this, and I remember this very vividly, Super Mario Odyssey launched during that first Christmas window back on the original Switch in 2017. Now, I'll go into the Japanese results, which we don't have all the data in yet for this. It's a little bit better. But in Japan, we don't have the final 2 weeks of the year, which is quite crucial. That will probably drop by the time this episode goes live. So it'll probably be in the newsletter. But it looks a lot better. For the final 2 months of the year, over 1 million Switch 2 units have been sold between basically the beginning of November to December 21st. The comparative period in 2017, that number was under a million, and overall, 1.4 million was sold over Christmas. So those last 2 weeks are going to be crucial. But basically, things are a bit stronger in Japan. And I think that sort of backs up the analysis that the Nintendo person told me, in that if you look in Japan, they have the cheaper version of the Switch 2, that Japan-only version of Switch 2, which is on a lower price point. But they also, the big Christmas title for Nintendo, if you can call it that, was Kirby Air Riders. And Kirby isn't a particularly big IP outside of Japan, but it's pretty big in Japan, and Kirby Air Riders is approaching 400,000 units in Japan, which is, it's not Pokemon, but it's a decent number. So it seems to have done a little stronger in Japan. It's a lot more robust over there. So yeah, Keza, I've not spoken to you since Switch 2 launched.
No, we haven't.
What do you make of it? Are you surprised by any of this? Thoughts, feelings?
I was somewhat surprised. I remember when the Switch 2 launched, I was hearing a lot of people saying there's no buzz. Like, there's been no buzz. There's not the same kind of excitement. And my interpretation of that is that, apart from anything else, there's much fewer, like, there's no games media left, like part of the reason that you're not seeing like endless articles and, hype about it is just, there's just many fewer people who are writing that kind of stuff now than there were when the Switch 1 launched. And so like the sort of absence of hype that people perceived, I think, is just more to do with the state of things in general rather than the state of whether people wanted a new Nintendo console. And then when it launched really strong, I wasn't that surprised because it simply has been so long since. And also the Switch OLED obviously was an upgrade, but not a significant one. I think that most people I was talking to over the kind of last few years thought that there would be some kind of significant upgrade to the Switch before the Switch 2, and then that never ended up happening. And so I think there was just a lot of built up demand. So I was expecting at Christmas it to be a little flatter. And I also, just the normal people in my life that I was talking to, I was kind of like, you thinking you're getting a Switch 2 for Christmas? And most of them are like, no, not yet. And I do think that a lot of people are buying into the Switch even now or a couple of years ago, and they don't feel the urge yet to upgrade.
I think you're right. I'm a Nintendo. I ended up with 3 Nintendo Switch 2s somehow at the launch of that console. Nintendo sent me one. I've ordered 2, and anyway, my son's got one now. But with the Switch 2, there's almost 2 audiences. There's definitely, we know there was Nintendo do annual monthly users in their reports. I don't know why, but they had about 100 million annual users of the Switch 1 over that up until March 2025, and those players are people to upgrade. And you can go to those players. Hey, you like Mario Odyssey, you like Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, you like Breath of the Wild, Tears of the Kingdom, whatever. Those games run better, or some of them have proper upgrades you have to pay for. But those games you love are on this machine. This is your next machine. It will support those games. And you're just going to naturally get some people, and millions of people, in fact, going, yeah, I'll get that, because it continues the gaming journey that I'm on already. And Animal Crossing, which comes out, I think it's this month, and then there's Mario Wonder as well, updates to those games. I think we'll continue that. But I think everyone else needs to see a game. They need to see something, hey, this is the things and I need to upgrade. And I know that I talked about this back at the time. I don't think Mario Kart is necessarily that game, because I think it's the game everyone gets as well as something else. And I think with Mario Kart World in particular, if you're a parent, which we both are, and the kids say to us, "Hey, can I get a Switch 2? I want to get the new Mario Kart." And there you go. Well, what's wrong with the old Mario Kart? Nothing. There's nothing wrong with the old Mario Kart.
There's nothing wrong with Mario Kart 8 Deluxe. There never will be anything wrong with Mario Kart 8 Deluxe. It is a perfect game. It's a hard one to follow up. Yeah,
I've jumped back and forth between the two because my little one's playing both, and I do think World is the better game, but it's not better enough to just justify that big price point. And I think that is. And then you go beyond that, and I love Donkey Kong Bonanza. I think it's an amazing game, but it's not a particularly mainstream one. It's not an IP that's as strong as.
Yeah, I mean, I'm very interested in what they're doing with Donkey Kong at the moment, because it suggests, like, between the opening of the Donkey Kong specific worlds in Universal Studios across the world, and then also there's a new Donkey Kong game, and it's not Mario and Donkey Kong. It's not Mario. It's just Donkey Kong. I think Nintendo's trying to, zhuzh up the appeal and the relevance of Donkey Kong as a character, which makes me ask, why not make some new ones? Where it would be. I'm a bit. I'm wondering what the first big original new game is going to be for the Switch 2. Because Bonanza felt incredibly original, but they played it safe and attached it to a character with at least some brand recognition.
Yeah, outside of Splatoon, and you have to go back even further, Pikmin, Nintendo does a new IP, and they do quite a lot of it. It's always often about audience expansion or trying to reach new players. It's things like a Dragon Drive or a ARMS or a Labo, if you remember that. Yeah, you don't get too much. They don't do too much developing of characters. Donkey Kong is like Pac-Man, a super recognizable character. Everyone knows who Donkey Kong is, but nobody seems to buy the games. And I say nobody, millions of people buy the games, but comparatively.
This is the thing with Nintendo, that when you're talking about Nintendo, like I keep bringing this up because, any game sells 1 million, 2 million, 3 million. It's sometimes headline worthy. Like Nintendo games have to sell. Animal Crossing New Horizons, I'll never forget the stat that came out during the pandemic, that it had sold 30 million copies. And I remember sitting at the Guardian Culture desk during one of our meetings and being like, it sold 30 million. And they're like, you mean 3 million? And then, no, I'm like, it means 30 million. That's so much more than any other thing could possibly. So when it comes to Nintendo, you are always talking in multiples higher, aren't you, generally, than your average game?
I incurred the wrath of the internet when Animal Crossing happened. I tweeted, Animal Crossing sold more in 5 days than Metroid has sold in its entire lifetime, all games combined.
Yeah. The way I've structured the book is around Nintendo's games, right? As a kind of way in to talking about the other stuff. But, Mario, Zelda, Pokemon, of course. But then there's also, Metroid and Nintendo Labo and Splatoon, all of these things. They tell you other things about the company, but none of them have been, even up until Breath of the Wild, Zelda wasn't even like the hugest seller.
So I've told this story on the podcast before, but you go back to launch of Switch 1, and I don't know if you went, I went to the Hammersmith event where they showcased the Switch 1, and I was sitting there in the queue, and everyone afterwards was really down on it. And my business brain, because that's the thing, I've got my Nintendo fanboy hat on, but when my business brain kicks in, I thought, right, the price isn't cheap. It's more expensive than a PS4, and it's not as powerful as a PS4. Nobody's buying handheld games anymore. We saw that with the Vita. 3DS had a big drop off. And the big game is Zelda, which is on the Wii U. And Zelda games, outside of the occasional one like Twilight Princess, rarely do more than 5 million copies. It's not that big a launch. And then, of course, I looked like an idiot very quickly.
That's one of the things about Nintendo, though, isn't it? That they do seem to often completely defy reasonable expectations that are based on what's happened before. Very often it's just something complete. Labo is not going to make its way onto any list of bestsellers of anything. But it's also, how wild that happened. Like it could have been the next Wii Fit. They managed to make a set of scales somehow sell untold millions of copies. So you never do know. You never do know.
Well, that's the thing. I think I'm looking back in the last year. I look at what happened, and I don't know why Donkey Kong wasn't positioned as their sort of Q4 title. Because you do. I mentioned this, like it's actually quite a Japan-friendly. I can't seem to say Japan properly at the moment. It's a very Japan-friendly end of year lineup. Pokemon's obviously big globally, but it's obviously particularly big in Japan. And then you had Kirby and Hyrule Warriors. I know Metroid's very Western, but I think Nintendo knew when they were going. The way they promoted it and the way they positioned it, they kind of knew that Metroid wasn't going to do it for them.
Yeah, I also think they knew Metroid perhaps wasn't the greatest. I think like anyone.
That's what I mean. Yeah.
Yeah. Rather than, the thing is though, even if it had been the best Metroid game ever, Metroid's never sold anything outside of America, has it?
But with Metroid Dread, they did push it. Like they put it in a good window. They did a lot of promotion around it. They put a special edition together. They did put a lot. They put a spotlight on Metroid Dread, and because I think they knew it was a good game. And in the end, fun fact: Metroid Dread made by Mercury Steam, and Castlevania Lords of the Fallen 1, I think maybe it was 2, also made by Mercury Steam, are the most successful games in the Castlevania and Metroid franchises.
That's the touch. The Mercury Steam touch.
The Mercury Steam touch. Yeah, but so they do. But same with Luigi's Mansion. They do put a bit of energy behind something if they think they've got something special. They did it with Luigi's Mansion 3, and then it became a 15 million seller, which is huge. And obviously by Mario standards, it's still below. But it's still huge by anyone else's standards. It's huge. But anyway, sort of, I did wonder. Because Donkey Kong was, I think, the best game they've put out this year. And I've jumped a lot between Donkey Kong Bonanza and Mario Odyssey because my son's playing both. And although they're gameplay-wise completely different, structurally there's similarities. And you can tell they're made by some similar people. But
yes, you can definitely tell. It's got that feel.
Yeah, but it's I don't think Bonanza's better than Odyssey, but it's definitely in the same area.
If you had never played Odyssey and you played Bonanza, you'd be like, this is the best game I've ever played in my life. Right, but because obviously most of the people that we would speak to have played Mario Odyssey, because Bonanza is a lot like it in quite a lot of ways, and quite a lot of its verve and its energy feels like Odyssey. It feels like an Odyssey spin-off. If you'd never played Odyssey, you'd just think it was the greatest thing going. Like my son adores it. He thinks Donkey Kong is brilliant. He's played it much more than I have actually this year.
Yeah. Well, what I found out with open world games and through Bonanza, because when Bonanza was showing Teddy, my son, some videos of Bonanza before it came out, and he said he wanted to play it, and he'd only just started playing games, and I was like, this is going to be way too complicated for you, because it's just smashing stuff, and you can get quite far in the game just smashing stuff. I'm the meticulous platform player where I've got 100% every level or as much close to it as I can before moving on to the next one. He's like right up to the final boss area very quickly. And it was wonderful to watch him play that, and he did love it as well. But it is a wonderful game, my point being, and I did wonder if with that a big Christmas push maybe. Regardless, they decided against it. They put it out. I mean, Nintendo don't have to release a game at Christmas for it to be a big Christmas game. They had Mario Kart as well. But regardless, they didn't have the lineup they had for the Switch One. Switch One, not only did it have Mario Odyssey at Christmas, they also had Breath of the Wild that year, and they had Mario Kart 8, which to a lot of people was a new game. And they had Splatoon 2, and they had ARMS, and they had Mario and Rabbids for me. I love that game. And Xenoblade. And so it was just this very strong first year, whereas this year the games have been a bit more niche, a little bit more specific, a little bit more popular in certain markets, but not other markets. It actually felt like an end of generation slate.
Yeah, I do wonder. I think probably the Switch, I have a theory that the Switch 2 was probably supposed to launch a couple of years ago, and that Mario Wonder was going to be its launch title. It's my conspiracy theory. I think that was going to be what was happening. But I think that because the Switch was just still selling well, and because the pandemic happened and everything, I think probably the course correction was to just keep things as they are, launch Mario on the thing that already has sold 100 and whatever million, and then, just push it a little bit down the road.
Yes, good point. That 2023, that's an interesting feeling. 2023 obviously had Tears of the Kingdom and Wonder and Pikmin
I think that's
4.
what it was supposed to be. I think it was supposed to be launched with Tears of the Kingdom, and that would be on the Switch as well. And I think it was supposed to be that, and then Mario Wonder would be the Christmas game. I think that's the in the good timeline that we didn't experience. I think that's what would have happened.
Well, moving forward, I'm say concerned. Nintendo announced games late, so I'm not too concerned. But their slate for this year there's a Yoshi game, there's Mario Tennis, the Switch 2 slate anyway.
There's Pokopia.
That's interesting, isn't it?
Yeah, Dragon Quest Builders, the Pokemon version. Yeah. Yeah,
that's generating a bit of buzz. I'm sort of half keeping an eye on that one. And then there's Fire Emblem, and none of those games are going to do it. Maybe say it again.
Pokopia.
Pokopia.
It's trying to be Utopia, but it's Pokopia.
Right.
Is it Pokemon?
Okay.
Now I'm doubting myself.
Well, I think that might be interesting. But a lot of the other games on the slate at the moment aren't going to do the things that we're talking about, which is bring over the audiences. I think what we're seeing is the holiday buyers, the people that would buy a game console at Christmas, looked at the Switch 2 and said, "Not this year." Yeah. So I'll be interested to see if they have what they have in this schedule. Obviously, they don't have to release it at Christmas; release it beforehand. But what they have for next year is Pokemon's 30th anniversary. Maybe there's a Mario.
It's so there's a crazy number of Nintendo anniversaries next year.
Yeah.
Pokemon's turning 30. Zelda and Metroid are both turning 40. The GameCube is turning 25, 20.
Don't say that.
The N64 is turning 30. And Animal Crossing as a series is turning, I think, 25. And even Pokemon Go's 10 years old, like this year now. And it's just, there's like 6 or 7 really huge, like any one of those could be like something you could pin your big marketing dollars for the year to.
Yeah, I mean, obviously secretly I'm hoping it's Zelda, but it's all knowing Nintendo will be none of those things. You can never predict them, can you?
No, not even if you spend literally decades of your life studying them as a company.
They'll decide it's the year of Kirby or something, and go all in on that. Yeah. I think that's what they're missing is a killer game. I think the price is also it's obviously comparative to the PlayStation Xbox. It's worth noting that PlayStation Xbox also PlayStation did okay in the UK and some other markets, but they also had a tough year.
And Xbox had a non-existent year, essentially, didn't it, for hardware sales at least?
It does look like they have properly just gone, that's not what we do anymore. And although I actually I was going to talk about this at the end, but I'm actually looking forward to Xbox's year with Halo and Gears of War and Phase of War and Forza, because it's like
2006 all over
again.
Yeah,
it's old school Xbox. It's the Xbox that I recognise. I don't recognise this Elder Scrolls and Call of Duty Xbox. Give me some Fable.
Bit of John Halo any day.
Yeah. but they didn't have a great year either, and they also but they had price rises, and I think that's a big issue for the console sector generally. But I do think the price is somewhat off-putting. I don't know what Nintendo can do about that. I don't imagine there's many levers they can pull. But
I assume it's as cheap as it can be while it still makes them some money.
Yeah,
because as we know, Nintendo almost never loses money on its hardware. It's a line that as a company they basically won't cross. And it's a sensible line.
Yeah, I also think it's I think they have so far, maybe they can turn it around, lost the value conversation around the Switch 2, because I know a lot of people that I talked about this with Reggie. We had Reggie on the show a couple of months ago, and I said to him, like, for me, it was £430 for Switch 2, and I got Mario Kart with it. And obviously, I was already a Nintendo Switch Online member, which most people are, which meant I got those upgrades to Zelda included in that. And I got a bunch of GameCube games included in that. And obviously, I was already a member. And all my old controllers and stuff worked on it. So there was no need, I mean, I did, but there was no need for me to buy all the extra accessories and stuff like that. So actually, what I got was a console with a brand new Mario Kart game and a huge array of stuff to play and experience and enjoy. I got loads of upgrades to Pokemon Scarlet and Violet as well, which made them actually playable.
Yeah, and Pokemon Legends Arceus also, just FYI, if anybody bounced off that game because it ran like absolute arse on the original Switch. It works now on Switch 2.
I did not bounce off that game. That's one of my favourite Switch 1 games.
It's now my favourite, yeah. No, my favourite Pokemon game.
And it's artistically better than the new one. This is problem with two Nintendo fans on a podcast. They talk business, and here we are just fanboying. But I actually think the value isn't so bad. I mean, it's still a lot of money, I think, up front. But I think actually, I do wonder if they needed to charge £10 for upgrading to anything. None of the others do that. But I don't think it's as hugely prohibitive, as expensive as perhaps the internet made out it was.
I agree. Especially if you look at historical console launch prices, like relative with inflation. You know, the N64 cost bundles more than that, you know, in the 90s. And I know that we don't live in the 90s anymore. We're all aware. But the idea that £400+ was sort of a really out of order price to charge, that never quite rung true for me. I think if it had been, you know, I mean, we all remember $599 as the PS3's hubristic launch price. And, you know, I mean, I think we also generally, I think we don't have, we're still paying the same amount for games that I was paying, you know, when I was a child. But that money's now worth less. You know, I was paying £60 for a Nintendo 64 cartridge in 2000, and I'm now paying like, you know, 50 quid for a game. And I think that it's, as is perhaps natural, people haven't necessarily made the connection to we play games really cheaply in this country, particularly in the UK. It's more expensive in Europe, obviously, but like games are cheap. They're cheap for what they offer. And so I think that there has, perhaps because of the free-to-play explosion, it feels like there's been a bit of a race to the bottom in terms of like what's the absolute minimum we can charge. And like you say, I think from a value point of view, it's actually not bad. It's not great, but it's also not bad.
Yeah, there's a few ways you can spin it. And we had Rebecca Valentine on the show I talked to her about this. I said, you know, The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, there was a lot of art stories going around. If you want the full version of that on Switch 2, it'll cost you like $90 or something. And my point to that was, but everyone who wants it owns it. So starters, it's not costing them that. And then most of them are Nintendo Switch Online members. So actually, there's two price points for that. If you want Nintendo Switch Online, Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, Switch 2 edition, is going to cost you $90 if you have nothing. And you want DLC as well, it's going to cost you that amount of money. But the reality is, for most people, it would cost them no extra money than what they're already putting out. So I'm not going to say free because you are subscribing to stuff, but it's like it would actually be, and that's the two price points. That for most of the hardcore fans, it was no additional cost, and if you're new to Nintendo, it was this huge amount of money. But yeah, that wasn't what the headline was. But I understand.
I think they could be making more. They could be making more of actually the value. You know, I think I don't really see. I don't know if this is just because I'm not looking in the right places, but I don't see them pushing Nintendo Online anywhere in advertising or in like. I've never seen a big marketing push for Nintendo Online, despite the fact that it's actually exceptionally good, especially compared to how much the other ones cost now. You know, and obviously you don't get anything like with Nintendo Online the same library that you get with PlayStation or Xbox. Like, that's obvious, but you do get access to every Nintendo game from forever. And I feel like, well, not every, you know, a lot of the ones that anybody will have got fond memories of.
One day it'll all be there.
I actually believe one day we'll have like a proper playable library, because I think Nintendo has shown quite a lot of commitment to its own history, and also something that Miyamoto said in like whenever it was I interviewed him in 2023, I think, was that, you know, Nintendo's always understood the value of making a thing once and then selling it forever. You know, like a comic book if you make a great hit comic book, you can print that same comic book for the rest of time. And that's, we've seen that now with games that are 40 years old still being sold. But I think that because Nintendo understands that and hasn't got this put it in the trash, put it in the rearview mirror attitude to the preservation of their own games, I do think that one day there will be a almost full library of like every notable Nintendo game that you can play. But right now, I know a lot of people who I grew up with who loved games when they were young, don't necessarily play them anymore. But if you were to tell them that for like literally, what is it, £20 a year, something like that? It's not much, is it? You could have access to like all of the Nintendo games you used to love. I think a lot of people would pay that. And I think actually a lot of people would pay for a separate low-priced Nintendo console that essentially is just that. It's just the old stuff that you have a streaming access to. I think that's something they should be thinking about.
Yeah, well, I'm sure they are. But I'm looking forward to Mario 35 coming out of the bin. So Nintendo Switch 2 has had a bonkers start to the year, but start to life back in June. But it has started to slow down over Christmas. The numbers are still good. Nobody's talking about this machine as being a failure, but it's not even. I'm not even suggesting that at all. The numbers are still very high. It's still one of the better performing game consoles. But it's just we have seen that sort of Switch 1 comparison start to diminish, and I just think we'll continue to see that. I'm going to change the topic a little bit. This is about a new story. This is the developer of mega hit Phasmaphobia has launched a games publisher. This is the developer is called Kinetic Games, formed by Daniel Knight. He's based, where we're saying solo developer these days, but he kind of is the epitome of it, behind the sort of ghost hunting horror game that's Phasmaphobia. Did really, really well, sold 25 million copies, made him a very rich man. He didn't expect it at all when it happened. He didn't have any of the infrastructure needed to handle 25 million players. He needed to find lawyers, accountants, had to set up a company. It's one of those rare fun stories of someone who did something for their mates and ended up becoming a millionaire. The game is actually still in early access. It enters 1.0 release this year. But because of that, he wants to go, hey, this is all the stuff I learned trying to set this up and get this working. And so he's launched Kinetic Publishing. They're going to fund games. They're going to support developers. I actually did a quick interview with Daniel and the firm's director of marketing and partnerships, Asim Tanvir, about what they're doing. And here is that interview. Okay, let's start with a big question. Why are you doing this?
Something I've always wanted to do. Basically, as soon as I started hiring people, it was always like the goal that I wanted to reach. And in terms of like why we're doing it right now is we're on our lead up to 1.0. And we've massively grown the team now. We're close to 40 people and we're still growing.
Wow.
So we're now at a very good position to be able to actually do this and put our time into it. Now was like the perfect time for us to start this.
Was there a motivating factor? Because with fans, you didn't expect anything. And then suddenly you had to learn everything the hard way. So is there a sort of desire to bridge that gap perhaps for studios that they might end up in a similar situation, or was it inspired by something from there?
Essentially, when the game released, I'd never run a business before. I'd never had to grow a studio or hire people or do anything that I've done now. So I've had to learn all of it just on my own right at the start. And we've essentially now, I've gone through basically every single thing that any game studio would ever go through. So obviously now we're in a very good opportunity to be able to offer that support to other people.
Yeah.
Because where I was just on my own right at the start, I was basically forced to just learn it all at the same time while still working on the game.
Yeah.
And yeah, we're now able to offer that to other people.
Yeah, the hard way. What can you offer them? What is it? Is it a full suite of publishing services? Is it funding? What is it that you are doing? Is the sim? Is that? I guess that's your area as well.
Yeah, I can cover that. Yeah, I mean, we're offering obviously, as Dan mentioned, like all of his experience from the dev side to any kind of indie studio, small teams. In terms of the financial side, we can offer obviously funding and support there. Offer in terms of the marketing side as well. That's where kind of my experience comes in over the years as well. Social media side as well, making those introductions to kind of like third parties, etc. as well. If you're looking for like a console release or a console launch for a game, and just general advice as well in terms of like how best to kind of walk that path that Dan walked many years ago. So yeah, we're looking to offer the full suite essentially of kind of advice and support that we can, and help teams or solo devs like Dan in the past to be a success.
Is there a goal? Do you have an internal target, or is it just that sort of altruistic, we just want to help independent studios?
Yeah, not really any target, so to speak. It's just, trying to work with and find the kind of the best teams and studios and games out there that are doing, great work in that indie space, being creative, being innovative. One of the key things we probably are looking at is games that are roughly like 12 to 18 months from release and looking to help support them across all genres actually as well. That might be a question in the future, but not just horror, but we're looking at all genres and not kind of pigeonholing ourselves in terms of like just horror. I think the experience that Dan and the team and I have, I think we can offer all of that, what we mentioned, across the board, across different genres.
You mentioned you're looking at things across all genres, but what projects are you looking to sign?
We're pretty much open to anything. Obviously, we do have the experience with multiplayer and horror, which we can definitely help people with. At the same time, we don't want to like box ourselves in with just doing those kind of games. So we are pretty much just open to any genre.
Is there any size of game you're particularly? I mean, imagine it's indie. Is there a cap on what it is that you can fund and stuff?
We'll be looking at kind of like smaller teams, like indie teams. That's what we wanted to help champion. That's the space that Dan grew Phasmaphobia in, and that's the space that we want to help grow ourselves. Like you see the success of like all the indie studio success recently over the last few years that having like we absolutely love that, and we want to help support that and further grow that. So if there's any like kind of smaller teams out there, or even like solo devs like Dan, we want to kind of help find like them teams or them people and the great games they're making, and whether it be horror or multiplayer, whether it be cozy games, whether it be RPGs, pixel art stuff, or whether it's like realistic stuff. We don't want to, as Dan said, box ourselves, and we just want to help support that indie space and help it grow even further.
Is there anything you think that's particularly unique about you and the way you do things?
I think as Dan touched upon, we've kind of gone through it all. So Dan has that experience of like, going from solo dev to like a team of almost like 40 people now. And then the team itself, like the core members that we have from the team, they all have their expertise in different areas that we will offer support in over a period of like 10, 15, 20 years. So we can offer that large experience over the several years, plus that really focused like indie experience that Dan brings, like, growing that game on its own and getting it to over 25 million sales. Not that we're kind of promising that any game we bring on will get 25 million sales. That would be great, of course, a great story to have. But we want to kind of offer all our expertise and knowledge that we've learned across those years, including Dan's experience. Obviously, where it's been like 10 years now, Dan, you've worked on Phasmaphobia. So, offer that experience from that point of view as well. So I think we're well positioned to offer that, I guess, that deeply indie experience of how to grow a game from zero to hopefully like 25 million and beyond.
But it's a big year for that game. You're coming out of early access, you're launching on Switch 2, and now you're launching a publishing division. You've got your hands full. Not a question.
Yep.
It's just an observation.
It's a busy year. 2026 will be obviously the year we're launching Phasmaphobia in 1.0 as well, so there's that to handle, but that won't be affected at all. Like I said, this is like a smaller team that we're growing on the side as well, from the publishing label, which is something that Dan always wanted to do and is like super excited and passionate about. One won't affect the other. We're still supremely focused on getting Phasmaphobia out there to 1.0 and beyond, and then also growing the publishing label as well at the same time. I don't know, Dan, if you have any further thoughts.
Yeah, and just like day to day, just my responsibilities are still going to be on the game. I'm not going to be too heavily involved in the publishing side, mostly just from like a green lighting games and oversight and the whole thing.
Is there like a quota? Do you have like, we could probably do 2 or 3 a year, or do you not even think like that?
We're keeping our kind of slate, when we do sign titles, intentionally quite small. So it's a kind of a more thoughtful, sustainable model. And then we can give each team we work with like the attention they deserve at the same time. I think I touched upon it briefly. Like realistically, we're thinking maybe like 2 to 4 projects in like a 12-month period, enough to build like a healthy slate without like compromising anything in terms of quality and support that we offer.
Keza, have you played Phasmaphobia?
I have not. I'm not a horror/ghosts guy. I'm also not an early access. I actually I don't play games when they're in early access now. Purely because, actually, just for professional reasons, it becomes completely unmanageable if you add, on top of the many hundreds of games that come out every year, also playing the ones that aren't like finished yet. So it's not something I have played. It is something I will probably check out when it finally goes into 1.0, whenever that is. But I do think it's interesting that whenever we hear about a new publisher launching now, it's this story, isn't it? So the same with Inner Sloth, Outer Sloth. It's someone who's had a hit who wants to seems to want to share that good fortune.
This is the reason why we get publishing stories quite a lot, but the reason why I've chosen to cover this one is it's not as I love the Phasmaphobia story. I think it's a fascinating story of a game that's just done so well. And I think I go to these UK events. We haven't had a UK hit for a while, and this is literally that. But I also love it when a developer has a huge amount of success, and there's nothing wrong if you don't do this. But when they have a huge amount of success and they reinvest it in video games, because we've seen. Back in the old days, and we could talk about the bad old days where publishers dominated everything. But the one positive of that is if EA made loads of money, yes, they're the directors and everyone gets a bonus and whatever. But they then take that money and they reinvest it in the next games. And that's what they do. Those games get reinvested. But when I'm picking on Larian, but it could be anyone. But when a Larian has a load of success, they can choose, and maybe they have done, to buy some yachts, right?
Yeah. They can legally buy some yachts with that money.
Yeah, they can do what they like. It's their money, their success. It's really great. But from an industry point of view, that sort of recycling of the money in the industry is kind of a good thing to happen from a industry point of view. And, you mentioned Inner Sloth, Outer Sloth. There's also Pocket Pair, the Power World developers who've launched their own publishing label as well. And this is actually the same. It's the same thing. He's had a huge amount of success. He's bought. I'm sure he has spent some of that money, but he's putting that back into the business, bringing it back into other studios, and that's the kind of thing that I like to see. I also love this is one of the Sim is going to be one of the guys sort of generally driving this, and I really love a Sim. This is back in 2022. I did a piece with him. He was it wasn't necessarily with him, but it was about a guy called Luke Wilshire, who was a young man who he was dying of cancer, and he wanted to play Marvel's Midnight Suns. And a Sim worked for 2K at the time, and there was and he and 2K and Firaxis and the charity called Solving Kids Cancer got together, made a demo for him really quickly, got it shipped, got it over so that he could play the game. I'm not going to go into too many details about it. There's an article, I wrote a story about it called Luke Was Here. 2K never wanted this story to get out there. Solving Kids Cancer was the ones that came to me with the story. It's an article on gamesindustry.biz about it. But anyway, Sim played a real sort of quite big role in making that happen, and I just thought it was a great opportunity. What a lovely story, and he's a lovely man. And he's in charge of Kinetic Publishing division. They've not signed any games yet. They're looking for games that are maybe 12 to 18 months from release, so sort of quite far along. But there's funding money available. There's publishing support. So there's that's quite exciting. People get their decks ready.
I do feel like any money becoming available at the moment is a story, isn't it?
Yeah.
The number of developers I've spoken to in the last couple of years who've got great pedigree and some pretty halfway through nearly finished games who can't find any help.
No.
Or any publishing interest at all is huge. So it's not, and like you say, I think this is obviously just a games industry problem, is it? But the extraction of something generates capital, and then that just gets kind of extracted out of whatever industry it is, that just gets kind of extracted upwards. It's nice to see that being reinvested in new things. I think that's it's the only way that things can ever be sustainable, isn't it, really, in any creative industry, particularly games. Money is a huge part of what makes the game happen, and if you make a hit and then the money just vanishes upwards into luxury goods or whatever else that directors decide to buy, then it's not helping, is it?
No, and it's the one. Obviously, I think there's lots of positives to the self-publishing revolution and all this kind of thing, but it does mean that you are seeing there is a risk that will happen. And I loved it when No Man's Sky is a great example. No Man's Sky has been, I think last year it was in the bronze Steam thing, so it made between $20 and $40 million last year.
That's turned to 10 this year as well, No Man's Sky.
So 10 years and still making that kind of money every year. And Hello Games is, a decent studio. They make big games, but they're not.
But they don't have 1,000 people. They didn't expand that much I mean, they have now. But, the first few years of No Man's Sky, it was still there were sub 50 of them, I think, making that game.
But that's why when back in the Game Awards 2024, and they announced they were publishing someone else's game and they were helping them develop it, I was like, that's great. That's what I love seeing that. But yeah, it's so anyway, new studio.
Get your decks ready.
Yeah. I know. Here's another story. Nex Playground. I've got one here for those who are on the video, not on the podcast. There it is.
I'm so fascinated by this little cube. It's a little cube. It's half gray and it's got a little neon yellow and green. And it's so tiny. It's mini. It's like your size of your hand.
Yeah, it's very much designed for what it is. It's a sold-out US console, of course. Did 650,000 units last year, which it may not sound like a lot, but that's all they made. They had to start flying stock in order to reach Christmas demand. It's coming to Europe, and specifically, it's launching in the UK this spring. It's not the only thing they announced during CES. They're doing a big push into sports. So they launched the NHL Puck Rush, but that's part of a Nex Sports portfolio of games. So throughout 2026, Nex will introduce additional titles in partnership with Global Sports League, including the NBA. So NHL and NBA are in there. The company's also designing a new line of accessories to enhance the sports gameplay at home experience. So that'll be interesting for that. They're also, and this is something that I love, they're looking at their safe online play. So Nex Playground is very focused on kids and families. They're very focused on trust. That's why they don't just let any old game be on the platform. They showed at GDC an early preview of its secure connected playdate feature, which will ensure that parents are in full control of linking one trusted playground device to another. This feature will provide kids and parents a safe option for virtual playdates without having to compromise on security, safety and supervision. The new feature will be demonstrated first with Tennis Smash Racquetville, which is a tennis rally game. I'm interested in this because it's weird because it's 20 years of the Wii.
Yes, it is. It is indeed, yeah.
And speaking of anniversaries, and I always think, it's just the Wii. But there's people who were born after the Wii that are now adults and in the working world that wasn't there when the Wii Sports revolution happened. And here's the thing, as a gamer, I played this over Christmas. It is very much flapping your hands in front of a screen. There's a Bluey game on it, and the kids loved it. You know, there was musical statues, and they were making pavlova on the and there was a Bluey. There's a Peppa Pig game which the youngest loves, and I'm disappointed that he loves Peppa Pig.
At least it's not Paw Patrol, mate. It could be worse.
Was there a Paw Patrol game? There isn't. The Sesame Street ones. But they were having a whale of a time, and everyone was sitting around this living room screen and dancing around, and it very much deja vu going on. But I think this is interesting. I actually think this is a bit of a problem for Nintendo in trying to appeal to families, because this is all coming in spring, which means it'll probably be a key Christmas item. They're selling everything they can make at the moment. They're a small company, and now they're going global with it.
I think it's insane that nobody's done this sooner, because I don't think the Wii would ever have stopped selling. Do you know what I mean? Like the Wii it appeals to a certain, there are still just loads and loads of people who bought a Wii with Wii Sports and never really bought another game. And, I think those people still exist. There's still a lot of people out there who just really want to play what the Nex Playground offers, which is, family friendly, but, not rubbish, but family friendly, it's kind of party and sports kind of games. And it's such a low price point. And now, of course, the buy-in, because I'm always advising people on, what to do, like how to keep gaming like safe and good for your family, right? And my general advice for the past few years has been Apple Arcade on the iPad, because it's no ads, no horrible, no grossness in your mobile games, because they're so exploitative, those mobile games in general, especially with children. So that, and then also just Nintendo. It's like invest in a Nintendo console, and that is like you can be assured that you will not have any inappropriate content. You won't have like a whole online system to manage. And now, of course, that now costs, like we were saying, 420 quid if you really want to invest in Nintendo. Like, it's a lot. So I think it's crazy that no one's done a kind of simple motion control console that's family oriented like this before.
I think some of the things that makes it challenging is there are the ways of getting something like this. Certainly safe-wise, what you're talking about, what you think you just said there is true, but obviously you can get experiences like this on your phone. You can get experiences like this. Netflix does this thing with
that's true, yeah.
With phones and everything like that. So you're starting
I have never tried it. Have you? Is it good?
No, but I read Stephen Tortillo's newsletter and he did. He liked Boggle on it. So we are seeing other places sort of do similar things that are a bit like what it was before. This feels, although it's Kinect, it feels so, I don't know why, it feels very Wii to me, I think, because of the family focus on it. But yes, I think it's interesting. I'm not entirely convinced. Their argument is that because it's a subscription-based model for the games, you have to subscribe to the games. It's actually quite a lot of money. Yeah. So the idea,
So it's a
like
cheap console, but you paying per month presumably for
you
access
can pay
to the
yearly, or I bought a 3-month one for this because I wasn't quite sure if the kids would just go off it after a little while. But their idea behind it is that creates a recurring revenue, which is they can keep investing in the game library and they can keep doing this, and it also encourages people to play other things, not just play with a Whelmweed sports game and then move on to, and then don't move on to anything else. So that was their thinking behind it, and I can get it. And he's the idea that parents, his argument, we had him on the show, and the CEO said that that he thinks parents prefer that option than having to be pestered for the next game and the next game and the next game. It's all here. You don't have to worry about it.
Oh, I don't know about that.
No, I don't know like that. But he made a case for it. I could understand where he's coming from. But I'm still not convinced. A lot of the games I was playing were very similar. Even I go, okay, Bluey and Peppa Pig, they were the licensed games, but it was still there was a lot of musical statutory games on there. We'll see. But it does look cool. I'm glad to have one, and
I will get one. I will be getting one in spring, just partly out of professional curiosity, but also because Nintendo Switch Sports is very genuinely the most popular game that's ever been in my house with my family, my kids. Everyone loves Nintendo Switch Sports. I've recommended it to so many people because it's just it's the intuitiveness of the movement. It's just kids just love to play with movement, and I think that. That's something that is not just died out in the 20 years since we had the Wii. Children still love jumping around.
I forgot that Nintendo Switch Sports was a thing. Anyway, we're running out of time, but they do have a couple of other stories that have just been coming around the internet that I thought I might bring up. Because we had Todd Howard on the show just before Christmas, I thought we'd talk about the fact that Fallout 4's player count doubled on the launch of Fallout Season 2 TV show. This is Steam data. It jumped to 40,000, SteamDB data, jumped to 40,000 players. New Vegas, which is a 15-year-old game, jumped from 8,000 players to 20,000 players on the launch of the TV show. Now, they did a big push, Bethesda, around the games. They did a lot of tie-ins and promotions. They put stuff in Fallout 76 as well and Fallout Shelter to try and get a benefit from the TV show, because the Fallout TV show Season 1 had a huge impact, and I think that's what we need to talk about here. Fallout Season 1, back in April 2024, it caused a rise in players of 9 million on Fallout 4. It was huge. It was the biggest selling game of the month as well. And so what we're seeing here with Season 2 is actually a trend we've seen in other TV shows, where Season 2 really doesn't have anywhere near the same impact as the first season had. Not too surprising. And we saw it in a substantial way with The Last of Us Season 2. It didn't have the same impact as the first. And indeed, the Halo TV series, which lasted two series, and then the first one had a decent impact on Halo and the second one didn't. So it is a boost, it's still having an impact, but it's really, it just shows that if there's a TV show about your game coming out, you really need to try and get it right on the first season and get the benefit there, because you're not going to see quite so much in the second season. I love the Fallout TV show. I think it's great. It's also done a little bit differently. This Season 1, they put it all out at once. The Season 2 is this weekly release. So we may see those numbers sort of be a little bit steadier over time. But boost, but not a huge one.
I would personally love to see a new Fallout game, please. I don't want to see any more additions to Fallout 76. I want a new one. I want a new one, please. With all this boosted player engagement and presumably some money coming with it, I would just really like to see a new Fallout game. That would be great. That would be my ideal outcome from this TV series.
It's been a while. It's been a
long while. I mean, let's not get started on how long it's been for Elder Scrolls, but it's been a long time for Fallout.
Yeah, at least we know one's coming for that one.
Supposedly. I'll believe it when I see it.
Obviously, this TV show ties us into another TV update. I don't normally do this, but it ties in nicely with Fallout, because another Amazon TV show coming out is based on Tomb Raider, and they've just announced the cast for that. So joining Sophie Turner, who is playing Lara Croft, we have got Sigourney Weaver as a new character called Evelyn Wallace, and Jason Isaacs plays Lara's uncle, Atlas de Mornay. Other cast members, it's a really strong lineup. Jack Bannon is here. Bill Patterson is playing the butler. Celia Imre,
Sweet.
John Heffernan.
Alfred.
Patterson Joseph, Sasha Luss. It's looking very good. A big year for Tomb Raider, obviously, because there's the remake or whatever you want to call it of the first game, Legacy of Atlantis, is what they're calling it. And there's a new Tomb Raider game coming out in 2027 as well. So they seem to have new games coming to try and capitalize on this TV show launch. The filming starts this month, but yeah,
Tomb Raider's also turning 30 this year, isn't it?
Yes, it is the 30th anniversary.
Yeah, so there you go. That's they'll have a new version of the first game and a TV show out.
Yeah, well, yeah. I'd be, and obviously, Phoebe Waller-Bridge is the showrunner on it, which is cool. I actually quite like the last Tomb Raider movie, the one with Alicia. I can always pronounce her name right, Alicia Vikander, the 2018 one. I don't actually remember anything about it. I just remember.
I was going to
enjoying
say, I'm fairly sure I saw it, but I can't remember a damn thing about it. Well, it was in the old days when video game adaptations were universally boggins, just rubbish.
Yeah. Well, 2018 is the old days. God, it upsets me. Here's another. I don't know if this is a story. I'll bring it up because it's got a lot of headlines. The most played games in the US on the PlayStation last year was Fortnite at number 1, Call of Duty at number 2, GTA at number 3, Roblox at number 4, and Minecraft at number 5. In 24 to 24, the year before, the top 5 were Call of Duty at number 1. Sorry, Fallout at number 1, Call of Duty at number 2, GTA at number 5. No, basically the same list.
I think Roblox and Minecraft switch places. That's it. That's the only movement there, wasn't it?
Well, in the Xbox, there was some movement, but actually it's exactly the same list. I mean, it's a fun headline, but it's not actually that surprising. The big live service games dominate playtime. Of course, they, if you've got a single player game that's 20 hours long or 15 hours long or whatever, that's not going to make this list because it doesn't soak up as much hours out of people's time.
Yeah.
The big live service hits of 2025 that are new, the big new live service hits was Battlefield 6 and Ark Raiders. They didn't release until October. So they weren't going to make that top 5. So I think it's a fun headline, but it's not surprising to me.
Where's something like Helldivers on that list and Overwatch? Like things that are not quite as old and established, but also not like new releases.
Well, Overwatch had a bit of a drop off. Helldivers 2 is a really interesting game because it's a bit of a spiky one. So you get it has these huge surge, and obviously there's an element of sometimes the drops are because the game made some updates people didn't like. That certainly happened early doors. But Helldivers 2 had a huge September, driven by the Xbox launch and a big update and that kind of stuff. One of the biggest months it had was in September. But then Battlefield and Ark Raiders happened, and then it dropped away. And I think my reading of the Helldivers 2 audience is it's an audience that is happy to jump from game to game to game.
Move.
So they will come back to it, but they'll also go away from it. And we actually there was a statistic that Arrowhead told us. They were one of the first people on our show back in a year, almost a year ago now. They were talking about how 6 million people who played Helldivers 2 during that first year were Call of Duty players. And so you've got that. So naturally they will go back to Call of Duty. They will go around. And I think Helldivers, that's why those sort of games. I don't know whether games are on the list. Sakana only shared the top 5, but yeah.
I do think a lot of people don't know this. Like I was trying. I think there was a stat I got in my Steam. The Steam yearly wrap up that they do for you.
Yeah.
Steam Wrapped, which said that 17% of playtime was spent on new games like released in 2025 this year. 17%, and I remember like that stat was pretty crazy to me. And then a lot of people that I talked to about it were like, well, yeah, of course, because people don't have to buy new stuff. And I'm like, no, because it's not like the other 83% of time is being spent on games from 2 or 3 years ago. It's all being spent on just this like Dota and Counter-Strike and just these big games. Like it's not that people don't feel the need to, people are like a year or two behind on their indie releases. It's that everyone's just playing the same games all the time, and that's something that just wasn't able to happen in previous generations, but it's I don't know. I don't see it changing. It seems to be.
It's also of course because we are a little older, and you're younger than me. But we remember the year 2000 when PS2 launched. The idea of us playing a 1990s NES game is like absurd. Like, I want to be playing that when I've got these wonderful 3D games. Now, 10 years ago, is 2015. It's Fallout 4. Yeah. and it's games that actually you play them now and they're still top of the genre they're in. It's The Witcher 3. It's GTA 5. And so you're in this sort of where you've got the phenomenon you're talking about, which is the live service on, which is the big impact. But you've also got the fact that actually, a new game comes out, but it is competing with a $10
it's competing with The Last of Us
version of a game that came out 5 years ago, which is still top of the range. There's another thing we've got. I'll be talking about this a little bit more on next week's show, but there is an element of when people obsess on that playtime stat, I'm a little bit mindful of it, because I was at I don't want to spoil next week's episode too much, but I'm very mindful of the fact that people get very excited about, or very depressed even, about the fact that that's only 17%. But I always think a game like Fortnite or a game like Roblox or some of those sort of titles, they kind of play a different role to a single player story game. And if you were to sector the market, just say, okay, when it comes to single player story games, what percentage were new games that were sold? I bet the number was much, 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 much higher. And because I play, well, I don't, but when I used to play live service games, it was mostly for competition or it was for hanging out. It wasn't for the stories. And if I want a story, I'm not, when you look at the games industry as a whole, you look how complicated our industry is, and you look at all the different sectors, these different, the roles these games play in people's lives. I think Candy Crush doesn't play the same role as Resident Evil. Resident Evil doesn't play the same role as Fortnite. And Fortnite isn't really competing with Resident Evil. I think it's competing with hanging out with your friends, going to the pools.
It's competing with hanging out in the park and drinking cider.
Yeah. I think Candy Crush is competing with TikTok. I think Resident Evil is competing with Stranger Things. And they're more, well, and they're all competing with each other. We're all competing for leisure time, of course, but I do think those games are playing slightly different roles. So when we look at that big macro look of 17% of game time, there's an element of like the screen industries separate TV, they separate movies, they separate YouTube, they separate these things out. In games, we kind of don't. We separate, everything's a game, but actually it's actually lots of different industries within our industry. Anyway, that's next week's show. I've done a spoiler there.
No, it's not a spoiler, it's a lead-in, Chris.
It's a lead-in, that's it. Keza, where can people buy your book?
You can, if you're in the UK, you can buy it at Waterstones or from the Guardian bookshop if you wish to support the Guardian's journalism alongside buying a nice book about Nintendo, and from Amazon if that's the only option that you have.
And if people want to read more of your opinions and thoughts and things, you've got a newsletter, don't you? And used to anyway.
I do. So I have been running the Guardian's gaming newsletter is
Yes.
mine. It's Pushing Buttons. It's been running for a while. It's my favorite thing I do. That goes out weekly. And yes, so please subscribe to that if you don't. It's my pride and joy. As is this book. Oh, and in the States, you can buy it in like all the big US and Canada bookshops as well. If you're in the States,
yeah, of course.
Yes, and yes, obviously, please do visit the Guardian. I feel like everybody probably knows what the Guardian is, but if you don't, we're basically the one remaining left-wing newspaper. So please do support the Guardian, if that is your bag.
Well, I certainly recommend it. It's been taking games seriously for longer than almost any other publication as well. And it does some really interesting things. But that's it for today's edition of the Game Business Show. We'll be back, of course, next week with more news, analysis, and insight into the world of the video game industry. If you want to make sure you don't miss an episode, head to thegamebusiness.com and subscribe to us there. We will email you when the latest episode is available. Until next time, thank you for tuning in.